Welcome to Working Lunch. You can bank on us to help save you money.
Bailed out but not paying out. MPs lay into the Royal Bank of Scotland and Lloyds Banking Group for not lending enough money to business.
Well, the banks say businesses don't want to borrow. Well, we'll find out if that's the case with Stephen Allen Brittis from the Federation of Small Businesses. And you're still annoyed with BT after it said that cheap calls are going to start at 7 o'clock instead of 6 p.m. Ben Shaw has been sifting through many of your emails. And we'll hear about the company that provides thousands of television shows and films online. Michael Comish is from Blinkbox. Oh, we should get a view from Michael Comish now. Michael's the head of Blinkbox. Now, you set up the business, what, a couple of years ago, and decided you weren't going to go down the route of borrowing from the banks. You went down the venture capitalist route. And I'm presuming the money was freely available then.
When we set it up, the money was much more available than it is today. The last 18 months in particular have been incredibly difficult from a non-traditional source of raising capital. And venture capital money has been very hard to find.
And as venture capital does become harder to find, have you ever thought of the banks as an alternative?
It's very difficult for startup businesses like ourselves. We're quite risky. We're not cash flow positive. It's not really a space where the banks are comfortable, so it's not an avenue that we consider.
And what have you heard from other businesses? Have you heard that actually the money's on offer, as the banks have suggested, and they're just not being proactive about it, or have you heard the opposite?
No, we've heard it's very, very difficult to get money. I think credit lines were drawn in the fall of 2008, and since then they've raised the hurdle for lending money, and it's quite tough to get capital. And
you mentioned venture capitalism, and that's the route you've chosen to go down. When you first started, I think it was April 2008, money was pretty free then. So if you approach, say, 20, how many would say offer you money or at least be interested?
You'd have about half who would be interested at that point.
And how's that picture changed now?
It's about 10% who are interested at this point.
10%, so 2 out of 20 would be interested.
At this point, particularly last year, that's exactly what you were seeing.
It's a tough environment. We'll see how the business is coping in that environment later on. Thanks very much, Michael. Declan.
Always so interesting to hear from people right at the sharp end of business. We'll have more from Michael a little bit later. Now, well, it's time to tune in for some more details about our guest of the day. Michael Comish set up the website Blinkbox just under 2 years ago. It's a library of more than 7,000 TV programmes and movies, which you can watch over the internet.
Now, you can rent a television show from 39 pence and a film from 99p. If you're willing to pay a bit more, you can buy them and keep them on your computer. Well, Michael used to work for Channel 4 and for movie companies, but his favourite film of all time, well, he's got two, Dirty Harry and Chinatown. Rather odd mix there, Michael. Do come over and join us. Now, we were discussing what Blinkbox actually is, and Declan being much more okay with technology.
Scepticism. Yes.
Indeed. Now, I don't want to know the technical side. For a consumer, what's the advantage of Blinkbox and why would you use it?
You can watch great movies and TV on demand instantaneously. You turn on your television set, you might have 5 things you can watch at one time, you might have 40 things. At Blinkbox, there's 7,000 things you can watch at any given time.
But you can watch these anywhere. You can have pay-per-view, you can use other websites. It's kind of I'm a bit confused as to why you set this up and only just under 2 years ago. It almost seems as if you're entering a market that already exists and could soon be saturated.
Sure. We launched about 2 years ago. There are very, very few places in the UK where you can watch these titles on demand. So if you want a blockbuster movie, it's just come out day and date with DVD, we're the only place in the UK where you can watch it instantaneously at that moment. No need to go down to the video store, no need to wait for a postal delivery. It's right there on tap for you when you want it.
The timeline of this is a little bit confusing. Anyone who misses this programme or can only watch a bit of it and needs to catch up, they can go to the BBC iPlayer. You've got, as Naga says, programmes on demand through services like Virgin and BT. You've got DVDs. You've got channels like More 4 and UK Gold that show old programmes as well. Where do you fit in this scale? When do you get the programmes and when do you have to hand them back?
So let's start with movies. For feature films, 3 months after they've been in cinema, they're released on DVD. On that day, you can find it on the Blinkbox site. Now, at that point, where do you normally go? You might get a postal delivery, or you might go down to your video store. You don't have to do either. You have the convenience of going straight to Blinkbox, one click, and you start watching. For television shows, and we really specialize in US series, so the big US titles, there are very few places you can find them. We get them day after broadcast, and then we have the whole back catalog. So for example, we have every episode of Friends ever made on demand on the site.
We've had a couple of questions from viewers. I'll start off with Mike. He wants to know if you can watch TV series or films on Blinkbox outside of the UK.
The answer to that is no. This is a UK and Northern Ireland
Which
service.
would be a problem for loyalty, wouldn't it? Because if someone does go for Blinkbox, sorry, I apologise, and has it as their home site and really uses it a lot, and then travels, say, on holiday and wants to keep abreast of what's going on, or TV series, you've lost them.
Well, if they've downloaded the show before they left and it's sitting on their laptop, you haven't lost them. If they're sitting in a far-flung country and they're trying to access it, just as you can't pick up necessarily the BBC in certain countries in the world because there are rights concerns. It's the same with blockbuster films and TV shows.
You mentioned the movie library. You've got deals with Warner Brothers, with Sony, with Universal, with Paramount. What I don't understand is why they deal with a company like you. Why don't they just set up their own websites to show their own movies and keep their customers to themselves?
I think partly there's a critical mass issue. If you're a single studio, you're only going to have your own releases, and consumers don't want to go to a different website for every film essentially. So they look for an aggregator. And secondly, these are pretty highly specialist skills. I mean, the web is a brand new area. It's not something necessarily that traditional media companies have deep expertise in, and they look to companies like Blinkbox, who are very innovative, very quick, very on the pulse of what consumers are doing to manage that for them.
Now, we've often heard complaints with the iPlayer that people struggle to get these programs up and watch them at the speeds they like. We've had emails as well saying that technology with Blinkbox isn't quite up to scratch, or broadband speeds aren't up to scratch. What are you doing to work on that?
The whole proposition gets better with broadband, and I know we're going to come on today's show and talk a bit more about the broadband initiative. But as broadband speeds increase, you have fewer concerns about whether you're waiting for something to come. So broadband has made why does Blinkbox only founded 2 years ago? Broadband wasn't there. So broadband really has been the enabler that makes it work, and we don't have to do anything on broadband speeds because the companies are doing it for themselves. Whether it's TalkTalk, BT, or others, the broadband speeds are increasing. The other bit of the equation really is the studios and the rights holders being relaxed about not bundling up programs with such restrictive digital rights management systems that you put barriers in the way of consumers watching. And studios also recognize that you have to have a solution where people are encouraged not to pirate. You have to make it easy, you have to make it simple, and we've gone down that route as well.
Okay. Michael, thanks very much for joining us. Good to speak with you about that.
Now, if you are online and you want to help a friend or a relative who is not online yet, then do check out our website for details about the Broadband Buddies scheme. Look for the page where it has that particular link. Naga.
Declan, thanks very much. Well, we can get a view from Michael Comish, because I heard you were listening to Frederick over there and agreeing with kind of thinking about what you're interested in if you want to get online, and not to think, okay, I need to watch movies online or I need to shop. And what are your tips if you ever meet people who aren't keen to get on?
I start with what their passion is. If they're mad about gardening, then I'll say you'll find information there that you couldn't find other places. If you're a mad shopper, on Saturday I went down to the high street. I went to 4 different stores, didn't find what I wanted. I came back home, went online. It was there. It'll save you a lot of time. It's
interesting because Blinkbox is aimed at a younger age group, 16 to 34. But surely that age group is going to widen, and you're going to have to start pitching to an older group. Are you prepared for that?
Yeah, no, it's beginning to widen, and I think one of the big changes towards the back end of this year will be people accessing Blinkbox via TV. So with Project Canvas launching, I think what you'll see is that you'll be attracting the older viewers we're discussing.
Okay, Michael, good to speak with you. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow at 12:30. No, 1:30.
See you then.
See you. Bye-bye.